Thank you so much. So definitely a pleasure to be here. First of all, thank you to the Broadband Forum team, to the sponsors, to the attendees. Obviously, without them, this wouldn't make any sense at all, and obviously to my colleagues that are speaking today. So, addressing the main question for this webinar, right? So, is a service provider App Store deliverable? We have decided for today to bring a little bit of the points that operators raise when they are assessing this possibility. And I can tell you that right now it is possible. And we will go through the presentation. So we will be focusing in elements like simplicity, speed/scalability, security, and we will see how all of these will transform into something else. And that's also something that I definitely want to bring today. So let's start without delays here. Let's just move on. Good. So is a service app store deliverable, right? So question number one, there are some elements that we need to take into consideration. I call it the 3+1 elements. I will explain what 1+1 means. But definitely, when it comes to the service provider domain, CPE is fundamental, right? Without the CPE, there is no penetration into the customer household, right? So regardless of the hardware solution, regardless of the SoC solution, the hardware needs to be present, right? So there are concerns and there are elements that we, from an ODM perspective, and today I talk a little bit from an ODM perspective, obviously, but when we talk with service providers, there are concerns. Do I have the right memory footprint? Do I have the right, CPU architecture? What are the elements from a hardware point of view that actually enable this capability to provide the apps? So all of that combined makes pillar number one, obviously. The second pillar, which is in the middle of this slide, is the middleware or the software, as you want to call it, right? And regardless, and I want to be very transparent here, regardless of the operating system, if it's OpenWRT, if it's RDK, if it's Purple OS, if it's even OpenSync, regardless of the operating system, I think what is really important and driving the scalability of this app store is to make sure that any solution is aligned with first standardization, but truly delivering what we believe will be a major stream and a major push from operators related to open source. So the solution needs to be as open as possible. And this is extremely important. Why? Because it brings us to the third element. And the third element is this component of the service delivery platform, this external cloud controller that pretty much hosts all of these services. By open sourcing, following standardization, and I'm going to bring the introduction, obviously, to the work that Broadband Forum has been doing when it comes to aligning standards around USP, right, from an agent point of view, but also from a controller point of view. The partnerships of the ecosystem that we have currently, regardless if you're talking about Wi-Fi management service solutions, security solutions, IoT solutions, IPTV solutions, all of them are important to the ecosystem of the operators. But this partnership aligned with the strategy, which I personally believe it's the way to move forward, aligned with the open source and the standardization, is giving us the three fundamental pillars for pretty much deliver this concept of the CPE App Store. The +1 is actually, and Craig was mentioning that in the beginning of the presentation, right? We have been talking the past year about containerization, services, right? And now it's time to talk about the in-home connectivity and how that will drive the growth of the CPE App Store, because this is the fundamental element, the in-home connectivity, the convergency that all of these elements will bring, will actually explode the concept of the App Store deliverable, and it will make it natural, right? So I think, as a starting point and setting up the scene, this is pretty much the main messages I want to pass here. Now, let's break down things. As I said, I want to bring here concerns that operators share with us when we are, reviewing all of these deployment strategies. So first two elements I definitely want to bring here is simplicity and speed. So how fast, how easy, is to bring an application into this framework? How hard it is, how demanding it is from a system integration point of view, right? So message number one, and I want to share this with you. And today I have partners here that will keep me honest on this statement. Yeah. So today, on this framework that we have designed, takes us today a total of 6 weeks for a service delivery, fully integrated and validated. So, and this already includes 2 weeks of validation and controller integration. And regardless of the controller, I'm just giving you an example on how simple and how fast it is to bring a new service into the picture, right? So this means, and my message here is that in 10 weeks, the service is ready to deploy. And why is this brilliant? Because we don't need to touch the low layer of the middleware, right? These partnerships, these alignments with these specific APIs that are exposed on this container, the standardization flow allows us to not reinvent the wheel, allow us to not go into this demanding integration to bring a service into the CP, right? So everything falls into this specific element of framework. In the screen, you have some examples. As I was saying, I always like to bring facts into my statements. So these are facts. Today, we have multiple POCs supported by some of the partners that you see here, up and running on operators. And this can be enabled quite easily. So hopefully I have addressed the simplicity and the speed. Moving to the next point, which is a more, how can I call it, demanding or intense elements, it's related to the security, right? Obviously, when we talk about containerization, once again, I don't want to repeat messages of previous workshops, right? Because we have addressed security on the container already. There are concerns, right? Concerns, about how do you isolate containers, meaning services from each other. How do you isolate those services in order not to impact the hosts and the critical services from the service provider? And critical services are obviously internet services, voice services, right? So, how do you make sure that these services do not interfere and do not overrule, critical services that are running on the box? How do you maintain this container isolation? How do you enable these multiple processes inside the same container? And how do you secure them and how do you monitor them? Right? So all of this management part in terms of what you can do around these services are definitely concerns around it. And what I can tell you is by using this specific framework, this containerization framework, in our case, we are using LXC through LCM, right? The first security layer in the orchestration principles is deployed in every application inside the container. So the container by itself already provides, obviously, security. And what we need to do after is specifically understand the requirements and design the elements that container or that service can do and can act upon the ecosystem of the host system, right? So this is extremely important. This is nothing new, but this is definitely a concern that operators do have, and they keep bringing on the table. So what I'm trying to say here is by itself, containerization brings a layer of security. And by bringing that, it also gives us the scalability that we need to deploy multiple services in the single host system or in the single gateway, right? So there are specific added values from Linux containerization, is isolation between environments, application consistency, distribution of microservices, management of life cycle of those services, and better control on the resources. Of course, we keep moving forward, and the more we move forward, more challenges we will be having, more requirements we will be having from operators. And there are definitely specific best practices for implementations. I'm not saying, and please don't take me wrong, I'm not saying this is the right way to do it, but this is definitely a way to do it. In order to monitor capabilities, meaning define limits to the capabilities of the system, monitoring resources when it comes to acting over the host system, profiling, kernel namespaces, and also everything that is linked to obviously these trusted images from our partners. So at the end of the day, the security will always be a topic, and it will continue to be a topic as long as we all follow the good practices. I think we will be, pretty much mature for an implementation and actually a carrier grade readiness. To complete the scene, right? So as I said, simplicity, speed, I think we touched it. We have proven that it's a fact. Security, yes, it's a concern, but there are ways to minimize that concern. Scalability, we also touched it a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's all about what you do with these 5 elements, right? So first element, as I mentioned, hardware, architecture definition, technology size, optimization solutions, right? So, operators are sensitive to this, right? You don't want to bring a flagship that costs $300 per device, right? This doesn't work for operators. So we need to be a little bit cost sensitive when designing the hardware, but still enabling the capabilities. Second element, open source, right? It's part of the strategy. I think it's the only way to do this, but bring open source in the true way, right? Working with the SoC partners, working on the SDK sides to make sure that all of these enablements, regardless again of the operating system, are part of a native SoC SDK BSP deliverables. Third element, once again, and this is one of the main reasons why we are here today, the USP part, right? So agent and controller architecture, this standardization. Why is this important? Because, you pick and choose your solution, right? When you talk with operators, each one of the operators will have a way to find their own deployable solution. So you cannot dictate the rules. So it's important that this standardization gives you the flexibility to operators to integrate different partners and different endpoints. And that's why following specific data models is crucial. And this obviously takes us to this CP App Store, the partnerships, the definition of these agent endpoints, how do they work between each other, which APIs are we exposing, how that works towards the main CPU, the standardization of this data model for operation. This is key. But as I was saying, the story doesn't end up here, right? There is much more coming our way, and I want to bring now 2 new elements into it. First one is obviously, and everyone keeps talking about it, is Matter. So I truly believe that, bringing Matter as an application layer, as another service layer, will exponentially bring the concept of this carrier grade CP App Store, definitely linked to the Wi-Fi, but I don't think we want to go there here today. But Matter is also one of the things that I know Broadband Forum is looking into it, this standardization. Let's make sure that everything glues together. And obviously linked to these high throughput, low latency, and extended reality, the Wi-Fi 7 and Metaverse will just implode the CP App Store convergency. So what I'm trying to say here, and pretty much my final statement before I hand over to Ian, is open source, standardization, and validation are the 3 elements that actually answer the question if a service provider app store is deliverable. And if we follow this, if we as a community, we work together regardless of our business objectives. This convergence is possible, and I truly believe that the CP App Store concept, the way we see it on the mobile or on our different clients like laptops, it is just a reality around the corner, but massively. And this is what we need to achieve. Still a lot of work to be done, but at the moment, it is definitely something that we can do, and it's a fact that is a reality happening already across the globe.